Hey guys, what's going on? I got a 2008 Jeep Liberty 4x4 and I've got into an oil pan job on it, which unfortunately on the four-wheel drive is a bit of an involved job, more than it should be. But these are notorious for the oil pans rusting out. In fact, this particular vehicle, it's 16 years old, but the transmission oil pan had already been replaced because it rotted out. But this time was the oil pan. On a two-wheel drive, it'd be no problem because you could just access it and drop it right down. But the problem on the four-wheel drive is this front differential axle tube. So I'll show you the way I did it. The recommended way is to go and lift the engine up and out, which obviously entails air conditioning, coolant, exhaust, a bunch of other stuff, as you know. So I watched a great video. It was on the Clayway channel, and it was phenomenal. He really helped me out and gave me an alternate methods, which he said on his video he wasn't sure if it actually saved time, and I definitely say it did. So the way that I did it was to take the front differential out. There is another video where some guys somehow muscle it out the back, and they say they lift the engine a bit. I'm not sure, they didn't say how much, but it was still in the truck. The trouble with that I found anyway, is the clearance at the back between the bell housing and the pan was too tight to go at the back. The pan ideally comes out the front easiest. So taking the diff out, you can get the whole works straight down and out the front, no problem. So to get the diff out, there's a few steps, and I'll show you what I did, and hopefully it helps somebody. So step one is to take the drive shaft out. There's 4 bolts, and then there's 2 bolts that go forward right here that go into this rear carrier right there. They come through there and right there. Oh, you gotta focus on there. So those 2 come out. Then there's 2 carrier bolts on the actual housing itself. So one is on the passenger side. It's right up at the top here. So it's pretty straightforward. Take that out. On the driver's side, there's a bolt, and everybody kind of laughs at this, and it's an oddity. Chrysler put the bolt head between the frame and the carrier bracket. So the way to get that out is to take the nut off this side, and they used quite a long one. So you take the nut off, knock it through a bit, and then just zip the head off of the bolt. And then you're gonna have to go to the automotive store and get an automotive grade bolt to replace it. Don't get one too long because you need to be able to get in there to install it. But I got one that was, I think it was 2 3/4, which worked fine. So once you get those out, there's a couple little things you want to get out of the way. So there's the vent tube that slides up. I took this oil spill tray off. There's a bolt on the inside and then one on the outside. They just come off, and that little plastic spill tray comes off, and that's sort of your way. So make sure you put some stands under the axle as you're doing this, just to keep it supported. And at that point, it'll drop down a bit, but it would be good to go, except you got to clear the axle shaft. So the way you do that is to take off, this is on the driver's side, so you got to take off the lower ball joint and upper ball joint up here, and the tie rod. So this is a Rust Belt car. It's 16 years old, so if I can do it, I think anybody could probably do it. It's not that bad. Once you get those out, the other thing that I ran into is this CV shaft. This is the 2 legs on the McPherson strut at the bottom of it. So I needed this boot to go out a little further, and it wouldn't go all the way for me. I got the axle assembly out, but there's no way it was going to go back in. So what I ended up doing was taking this bolt out the bottom, which just be careful on the threads on the other side, but get it moving, and it actually comes out pretty easy. Just use some good PB blaster and get it all soaked in, and it'll come out. So we got that out. You leave the shaft, the CV shaft, in the hub. You don't take the hub out or anything. Just I took the brake rotor off just to make it a little bit lighter and easier to maneuver. But once you get that out, one trick that they had on the other channel was to just unclip your ABS connection rather than try and get the other end out of the hub, which is, if you've ever done them, you know they're seized in there and they don't usually come out intact. So there's a little red clip, pop that up, unplug it, and then you can just leave the loom just hanging there out of your way. So once you get that far, then it's good to have a second set of hands maybe to help steady it, but you're going to pull the CV shaft back so it fits right up in that housing. Right, that's the CV shaft, and that's the housing right there. So you're going to pull that left side out first, and there's a C-clip on each axle shaft, and it sits in the carrier. You don't have to get in the carrier to release it, but it'll just kind of pop when you pull it, and then you know it's out. So slide that left one out. This whole left passenger side suspension will swing out, and then you're going to take that shaft out. It'll just be sitting there out of your way. And then as you're lowering down the differential, you lower the driver's side down, and this just work this other end out. It'll just pop. One of the things I did on each side, just because you're kind of manipulating the axles through it, and the age, it's 16 years old, I got a new seal on both sides. They're very inexpensive and definitely worth doing. The passenger side seal is recessed in this, like the full length of this housing inside. You'll see when you get it apart, but the inside was a little trickier. I had a cheap axle puller and it broke on me, but I got it out with a bar carefully, put a new one in, and same thing on this side. Once that's out of the way, you drop it down the ground. Oh, I was just going to mention one other thing. Just make sure you get an 8-pointer in the bottom of the diff and just drain it first. I missed that step, and I don't know if it was mentioned on the other videos, but covered myself and my shop floor in diff fluid, which is nice. So kind of a dumb move, but anyway, drain that out, and then you can drop this whole thing down. Once you get that out of the way, taking the pan off is accessible. The only issue is this windage tray. So the windage tray sits up inside. It sits between, it's like a gasket with this tray, I guess, to stop the oil from sloshing around. The trouble is that at the factory, they really seal this tightly to the pan. So you got to separate this tray from the pan, which is a little bit of a chore because you're working up here. The reason you got to separate it up here is you got to get in. There's two nuts that hold, they sit right here and here. They hold the tray to the carrier bearings. There's like 2 studs that they thread into. And at the front, there's also an oil pickup tube. So the oil pickup tube runs right in here, and it runs, it goes up. I think it's a 10, goes straight up, holds that in. On the top of it, there's an O-ring, and the O-ring, in my case, was pretty brittle. And it's definitely worth doing. If you got all this apart, you just slide it on. It's so easy. But to get all that off, you've got to have the pan and the windage tray separated, and that's a bit of a job. So you just got to work around, take all the bolts out for the pan, and then just take your time and separate it. Just be careful if you're on the other side of the windage tray, between the block and the windage tray or the gasket, that you don't score the block. So just take your time. Once you get the pan and the windage tray separated, you can drop the pan down, get at the 2 13mm nuts at the back. Just use like a ratcheting box end if you have one. And then this one's easy to get at. Just use an extension and a 10. I think it's a 10. And that oil pickup will come down. The pipe runs all the way along the pan to the sump at the back, where the pickup itself is. So you get that apart, and then putting it together is a breeze. Putting it in, just assemble it loosely. One trick is to use a bolt on each side on the windage tray, just to use it as an alignment bolt. So put it just in the windage tray on each side and get it up there, and that way you'll when you go to put the oil pickup and the 2 nuts on, everything's nicely aligned. And then obviously take it off when you put the pan on, and then button it up back up to torque it up properly. The other step that when you're just before you remove the pan, there's this block here at the back. So there's 8 bolts, I believe. There's 2 that go up here, 1 that goes backwards, 2 that go forward, and then the same thing, 3 on the other side. So those are easy to take out. That just removes that block out, and then you can get at the back of the pan. So that was no problem. But the 2 challenges are just getting that differential out is a bit of a chore, but it's definitely doable. And then the pan itself is a little bit of a wiggle job, trying to get that seal or the windage tray / gasket off the pan. But once you get that, you're good to go. In this case, I had some really old brake rotors, rust belt brake rotors. That's what winter does to them, so they're shot. So I went to a good supplier, Parts Avatar, and I got some good Bosch ceramic pads here, and they come nicely packaged with new clips, and wrapped in a rag no less, and the rotors are nice. They're all wrapped in plastic, so they're nice and clean, ready to go. So I think that's the main steps, guys. Like just like, you know, it's one of those jobs. It's seems incredibly long for what it is, but if you just persevere, it'll all go together no problem, and you'll be back in action. So I hope this helps, and take care, guys.